Hey there, listeners. So, I am going to start off this discussion with an apology. I had every intention of having the content for the Mind Warriors Part 1 to be ready for this week. However, my planning didn't go so great. My family went on vacation for a week, and I was with my kids, and time got away from me. There really is a lot of planning that goes into putting together this podcast, and time is of the essence, and time was not something that I had a lot of. So I always try to push out new content every 2 weeks. Technically, I do it every week, of course, with the trailer. But then, the real content, the meat of what it is that we're talking about, the review of one of the episodes every 2 weeks. So I apologize for that, for not having something this week, but it will be ready and up for next week. But I didn't want to leave you with nothing. So I scoured the internet, and I've actually done this a couple of times, and I found an episode from the back of the Cereal Box podcast, put together by a gentleman named John Pica. I've listened to a few of his discussions, and they're always very colorful. But back in March of 2024, he made the bold claim, better than the X-Men, and talked about his preference for Defenders of the Earth. So I thought that I would, in the show notes, share out that episode, that discussion that he did. For those of you who are not familiar with the back of the cereal box, I actually think it works better if you watch it, because what John does is that he'll basically review a cereal, right? And he'll talk about that. He has a lot of pop culture references, and he'll kind of go back and forth. So the meat of his discussion for this particular episode around Defenders of the Earth doesn't really get started until about 51 minutes in, but it's an interesting listen. And again, it's one of those few discussions out there about this particular intellectual property. I've kind of argued before that I think that King Features does a really terrible job of pushing their content, making it available, keeping it relevant, I guess. I shouldn't say making it available, because of course they posted Defenders on YouTube freely, but making it relevant. I really do feel like a lot of these characters have fallen into obscurity. I mean, shoot, the only reason that my daughter is even remotely interested in this property is because of this podcast and what I'm doing. My son has absolutely no interest in it. And so, yeah, it is one of those things that I do think that they need to be doing more, but, alas, it is not to be as of right now. But again, I apologize. No new content for this week, but I will leave you with links in the show notes for John's discussion of Defenders of the Earth. I have both the YouTube link, which again, it's a good watch, but also the podcast through Apple Podcasts that you can listen to. And I will be back next week with a full review of Part 1 of Mind Warriors. Until then.